So the worst kept secret in politics is out there. Andy Burnham is now officially the Prime Minister. I'm joined with Paul Hutcheon, the political editor from the Daily Record, to discuss his first day on the job. So Andy Burnham unveiled to the public, conducted his speech outside of Downing Street, Paul. What were your first impressions of him?
Well, it's a momentous day in UK politics and also for Andy Burnham. I mean, after all, he's tried to become Labour leader and Prime Minister on several occasions. He went for the Labour leadership 2010, 2015 didn't quite work out for him. And then he's managed to become Labour leader at the third time of asking. So it was a big moment for him. And I think that he did live up to the occasion. It was a very bold speech. Often you get politicians or new prime ministers indulging in lofty rhetoric, but this speech did feel different. It was not about the status quo. It was not about continuity. It was very much about breaking with the past, and particularly the past in relation to the changes that Mrs. Thatcher pushed through over 40 years ago. So I think that he'll be pleased with it. But the question is, it was strong on rhetoric, strong on words. What will the actual policies look like?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. From a personal point of view, it was quite interesting to watch him because he looked quite emotional. He looked like he was kind of holding back tears when he was stepping up to make his speech. And it's obviously a momentous sort of day. But what does that tell us about his character and how big a responsibility this is for him?
I think he's a very authentic politician. So when you watch him speak, he's not like President Obama. He's not an amazing orator, but he's authentic. He just looks like an ordinary person who's committed to making the lives of ordinary people much better. And I thought that he did very well in Downing Street. I had a lot of pals and other people in politics message me, not even Labour people, saying that he thought that he'd done very well. So I think expectations are high. There's a real hunger for a good Labour government, or indeed a better Labour government that we've had over the last 2 years. And a lot is resting on Andy Burnham actually being a success.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And obviously, we only have a small sample size from that speech to go off. He was only speaking for 5-10 minutes. Of course, there was footage of him greeting people, shaking hands, kissing babies, all the sort of typical stuff that you would expect from an incoming prime minister. But what do you think, Paul, are the sort of main learnings that we can maybe take about Andy Burnham in the way that he conducted himself, but also, for example, the fact that he didn't use the typical podium when conducting a speech outside of Downing Street? Is there anything that we can read into that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think he doesn't want to come across as a typical Westminster politician, even though he's been an MP before, even though he's been in the cabinet before, I think under Gordon Brown. He does want to give the impression that he is a guy who's going to come to Westminster in order to redistribute power away into local communities and the nations and regions. And so maybe not using a podium just furthers that impression that he is different. And, you know, I think that he has been in politics for a long time. Even though he was in the cabinet under Gordon Brown, people will probably forget about that. He was never really a household name. He's quite a junior member of the cabinet, but that will have given him the experience of knowing how government works, how to get the civil service to do things and actually take power away from Whitehall and give it to other parts of England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland.
And he said that his first priority, the second that he was stepping through those doors of number 10 Downing Street, were going to be to tackle homelessness. Of course, he'd been at a homeless shelter earlier on in the day and that sort of thing. So what did you think of that as his first, official act as Prime Minister?
It was a bold move. Obviously, the relevance to Scotland is not quite clear. So in terms of rough sleeping, that is very much under the control of the devolved Scottish Parliament. But it's a very bold commitment. It might make the Scottish Parliament redouble its own efforts in that area, because rough sleeping, particularly in Glasgow, has been a real issue in recent years. But rather than come in, as Keir Starmer did, and talk about how difficult it was going to be in order to close a black hole and difficult decisions and difficult cuts were going to have to be made, he has come up with a very bold initiative a social justice initiative about helping some of the most vulnerable people in society. So I've got no doubt that if you're a Labour voter, a Labour Party member, that will be music to your ears.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, Paul, so of course, today is done and dusted. Today was the sort of changing of the guard, I guess, but he's got a big summer ahead of him in terms of getting stuck into this role in as Prime Minister. So what do you think the next few days are going to have in store for him? Of course, he's set to be unveiling his cabinet this afternoon. He'll be meeting and greeting people inside Downing Street. But what do you think his main responsibilities will be over the coming days?
So I'm expecting him to have a phone call with President Trump at some point today. President Trump said yesterday that the Burnham government was going to make a complete U-turn in oil and gas. I'm not sure that's the case. It might be a partial U-turn, but it's not going to go as far as Donald Trump wants it to go. Obviously, he's got his cabinet to assemble. But tomorrow is going to be a big moment as well, because I think he said in his speech outside Downing Street, he's going to talk about some of the policies, the immediate cost of living policies he wants to institute. And he's also going to say how he's going to pay for that. So today is very much about personalities. It's about history. It's about a new prime minister, a new cabinet, who's in, who's out. But tomorrow, I think, is when the real hard graft will start. He'll announce policies, and those will be pored over, scrutinized, and you'll probably find out how difficult government really is.